Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Hoops Journey. Today, selfishly, the host is thrilled. Does not know, but I mean, this is a guy that I looked up to from a basketball standpoint, an absolute legend, not only in our province, but in the country of Canada. And I think the cool part about today is everyone knows the name, but maybe doesn't know what's happened since the days of playing were over for him. He's turned himself into a very successful coach overseas, easily one of the best players that British Columbia has ever produced, a 4-time All-Canadian, which is absolutely bananas. Probably would have been 5 if Hansen would have just passed him the ball a little bit more as a rookie. But we are honored and privileged to have Mr. J.D. Jackson with us today. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great, thanks. It's morning for you, I guess, and evening for me, so we got the timing right, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. You had practice today, or a day off for the
boys?
No,
actually, today was day off. We're just at the end of the season. We got in 2 days, it's our last game of the season. We're in that weird space where we just missed the playoffs, and in Europe, you always have the bottom teams go down to the lower division.
Right.
So we're safe from that as well. So we're sort of in that middle ground where we're playing for nothing for it's been a few weeks. So everybody's sort of happy that we can start, get around to recruiting and on to the next season because it's sort of playing for nothing. So it's no pressure, but kind of.
And do the guys
the next step? Do
the guys sense it a little bit in terms of like? I'm guessing that they're still going out and competing because they know people are watching and there's contracts to be signed or extensions to be made. So they've still got to kind of get it done, right? And that would be an interesting sort of space to be in as a coach and as a player.
I mean, they'll be motivated. The buy-in factor is playing for the team and playing together because, as you say, they're worried about the next step. Who's watching? Who's going to be scouting them? And most of the scouting now, it's not like in the old days where you get film on players. Teams just go on to Synergy and look at the clips. So first clips you get to are the last clips of the previous year. So they know that's the first thing the GMs and coaches are going to be looking at these last games. So individually, they're focused and they're trying to be effective. But, we have fans. We have our own hierarchy here.
Yep.
And the turnover here is a lot quicker in Europe. Maybe like in the CFL, you have quotas. So the French players maybe will have a couple of years, 2-3 year contracts, a little longer term, but everybody else is on a 1-year contract. So it's important to, to finish with a good attitude. Don't want to get a bad reputation. It's weird because usually this is my first time sort of on a lower budget team in the league. Most of my coaching and playing years, I was in the higher budget teams, sort of playing in the European Cup. So you sort of have the first pick recruiting. You're always playing for something. You're always trying to get that home court advantage, or you're heading into the playoffs or whatnot. But it's kind of odd for me. The team's pretty happy because it was total rebuild. It was a dog's breakfast last year when I came in at the end of the year, and we sort of put everything together urgently and stayed up in the first division. Mm-hmm. And so for them this year was pretty comfortable because we started building the old standards. Building a culture and trying to get some continuity, some players to stick around. So they're pretty happy with the season, but it's just new for me not to have. Be heading into the playoffs and going for the titles. So we're building towards that, or else, I wouldn't have really bought into the project, but it's going to take a little while. And so it's new for me.
Good perspective though. And that's fun. And was chatting with Jeff McKay yesterday a little bit. And that's cool that you came in so late and turned it around. And, maybe just like you say, you've already used the word project. And you also touched on something that will chat with him about later is, the in and out of the players, but you as a player, stayed with a few clubs for, 7-8 years. Right. And so I think that says a lot, but we'll get into that. And let's just quickly check in. How's life for you? Your family, things are good these days. I mean, we're all sort of, I don't know what France is like, but we're, out here in Vancouver, we're in a place where, COVID sort of, it's still there, but life is sort of back to, I hate using the word normal, but it's just we're back to where we are. So how are things for you and your family and life over there?
Yeah, I think just maybe because it hit earlier and for whatever reason, people aren't reckless, but things opened up. We seem to be confined a little earlier than in North America, and then we opened up a little earlier, and everybody's been through at least a couple bouts of COVID at least once after the vaccination. Sort of seems to be getting normalized, which is not easy to deal with as everything's opened up. I've got fans in the gym. We're in team sport where, guys are practicing with each other, practicing against other teams, traveling all the time. So in public spaces. So it's a lot less fear with the guys not getting as sick, but it's still around, and we have all these protocols. It's just like in the North American leagues, professional leagues. So it's been complicated, and you're kind of just hoping we'll get back to normal one day and just be able to concentrate on basketball and stuff. But everybody got through it. The confinement was tough. It happened when I was actually taking a couple of years off. I was back and forth with the Canadian team, with the national team during the windows, the qualification windows. So that kept me a little bit connected to basketball. But I was hoping to travel, get around a little bit for those couple of years, and I ended up, just sort of sitting around. And they actually canceled the French league that first year, so it kind of screwed up my plans. I was hoping, get back to basketball, get into a club situation. So it was a couple of years I was kind of really just antsy and ready to get back to it. So I was happy to have this project. It was tight last year. I mean, we almost went down, but it's a long-term project. They're going to, they're building an arena here. Everything about the town here is built around the team, about basketball. So there's a lot of future. We just have to build it. No, it's very good. Out here, it's not, you do have private sponsorship, but, to have continuity and a consistent budget, the city, the region, all the politicians, they have to be behind you. There's a lot of funding for the team, and you can't just take it revenue and whatnot isn't enough. So it's good to have a community that's just got that one sport. It's a small town, but everybody's behind the team, and they're going to do everything to make sure we stay on top. So that's good. I mean, there's a ceiling to that. Understand that. Before I had coached in Lyon, which is a major city, a lot of upside as far as the market potential for a team like that. Here it's more limited, but if you do your best, you can compete with the bigger teams. So it'll be fun.
Awesome. Good. Yeah. There's already enough for a coach to worry about too when you throw in COVID and a pandemic. It's like, my God, right?
I'm just happy to be back at it because I had a lot of stress. I've always, as a player or through about, I guess, a dozen, 14 coaching years, I was always in the Euro League or Euro Cup, top level competition, and you're always just all in all the time. There's a lot of pressure. It's very intense. And I'm in my 50s now, so it's kind of like, okay, what else can we do here? Go back to sort of the starting point of a smaller project and try to help them build something new, and it's a little more thorough and it's less hectic. So there's been a change. There's a lot of adjusting and learning, but again, it's fun.
For sure. Yeah, it's good to be back. And they had just over 7,000 at the provincial final this year, which was awesome, right? I mean, it just felt so good to be back after a year off. And they lifted the mask mandate on the Friday, and the final night was Saturday, and it was like people were just starving for it, right? So I'm sure the fans and community there will be excited and cool. Ready to roll. Yeah. And speaking of high school basketball, let's jump back, man. Let's go down memory lane a little bit. And don't worry, you're not that old, man. I mean, come on. I mean, if Shields and these guys can dig back into the crate, surely there's some memories for you. Don't worry, we won't know if they're true or not anyways.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The further back we go, the more it'll be.
Back in my day, But I think you have a unique story, right? Selective. Just growing up where you did and being able to, in sort of a small community, but surrounded by and growing up around some pretty stellar basketball players. Talk about just growing up in life for you as a young guy and what sport was like. And did you do just basketball? Were you baseball?
No.
Yeah. And your life as a young guy.
I was born in Burnaby, and my older sister as well. But both of our parents were young. My dad was in university. He was actually at Simon Fraser.
Okay.
He played a year or two at Simon Fraser. But they had the two kids while they were still university age. So it was sort of, okay, enough of sports. We got to get a job. We got to get going. So he became a teacher. He stayed in sports. He's a PE teacher. Got a job in the Okanagan in Vernon. That was sort of how we got up to the Okanagan. My first real experience with sports personally, of course, was linked to him, watching him play. But it wasn't in Vernon. We actually, when I was the first and second grade, he did a teacher transfer for 2 years to West Germany, the Ramstein Air Base. I don't know if you've ever heard of that big air base in what was West Germany back in the day. This is like the 1975. So we were out there, and he was teaching on the air base. And it was, it's a huge air base in Germany. There are a lot of bases, and they have actually a basketball league within the base. There's a lot of American ball players who are in the Army or in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And they play against each other. So my dad linked up with that team. He played for them. So I would go to the gym once or twice a week and watch the military league play, the American players playing ball. And that's where sort of my first exposure to basketball. And then the home team, the Ramstein Rams, I remember I was the 6 or 7 years old. I was out there throwing the balls back to the shooters, the little kid getting the rebounds and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the first exposure I had to it. But as far as sports go, I come from a hockey family. Like my father, he's from Toronto, and his uncles and their brothers were all Maple Leafs. They're like a couple of them are even Hall of Famers. So that's his side of the family. And so they had me on skates, and I was a skater. I couldn't skate. Right away, it's like, okay. So I tried hockey right away, and they had me. By the time I was second grade, it was like, okay, forget it. And because we were in Germany, I got really into soccer.
Yeah, of course,
that was the main sport out there, and that was my sport for most of my youth until I hit secondary school. Even when we got back, because they didn't. I mean, basketball. Jeff McKay talked about this a few weeks back. It was really just our parents, who really organized the basketball and got it going. In those days, it wasn't until high school there wasn't much basketball in the community. You played soccer, you played hockey.
Yeah,
maybe you were on a swim team. So I was into soccer. That was my thing, and I had. I was into the Vancouver Whitecaps and Bobby Leonarduzzi, all those guys.
Yeah.
And then basketball was once I got to, I guess it would have been 8th grade, Kalamalka Junior Secondary, that's when we really started taking it seriously and, caught the bug and just became almost obsessive about it, with a group of friends. And like I said, my dad was the PE teacher at that school and the coach of the team, so it just all was natural. That's how I got back into basketball. Every summer, we'd load up. We had this big Ford Econoline van, and we'd load up.
Yes.
And because we were sort of the North Okanagan, we'd work our way down all the way through the Central and South Okanagan. We'd pick up all those guys, like Jeff and whoever, Spencer McKay, Mike Clark, whoever was going to jump in, and we'd all go down across the border. We'd go to Spokane, where you could get all the gear, because we didn't have access to any shoes, ball, anything. We'd load up. Everybody had their paper route or whatever money, and your allowance, and you go down there and you'd load up, you get your shoes, whatever you needed for the season. And then we'd go to basketball camp. A lot of time it was at Eastern Washington University. One time we went down to Oregon State. And so my dad would coach, and other coaches and fathers would come with us. We'd all go down there. They would coach, and then we'd get to do camp for free, because our parents were coaching.
Oh, yeah.
So it was huge. We'd be, for us to go down to the States and play against guys who knew really how to play, and coaches who really knew the fundamentals. We do that 2-3 weeks every summer. And then we all got really good. I mean, it was Jeff, I won't insist on it, but, Jeff McKay talked a lot about it. We sort of, for a few years there, the Okanagan was a bit of a hotbed, not just locally, but even on the national level. A lot of guys on our national junior team and youth teams were coming from BC, which isn't so much the case at all, but now, back then there was a lot of interest and a lot of good players coming out of the Okanagan. Yeah.
Something to be said for having the dad who's just got the key to the gym, right? It's pretty easy to get hooked into something when you just hop in the car with him and shoot for an hour before school every day or whatever.
It's great. It wasn't always easy because he was a real A-type. So in spite of being the phys ed teacher and having all his, men's league and all the stuff he did, we'd be up, in the middle of winter, these cliche stories, but we did that. He'd have me up at 6 a.m. We lived out by the national park, so we'd be out running at 6 a.m. Before homeroom at school, we'd have to go shoot and play one-on-one for 45 minutes before school even started, then practice.
Yeah.
Every day after school, and the tournaments on the weekends, what you really look forward to. But he had me working really hard, which was great. It was great for me. But for sure, you get into it a bit when you don't feel, sometimes. So, I owe him a ton. It was great. And it was great for my friends, too, because it wasn't just me. We had a group of guys who were just so in love with basketball. We ended up, in junior high school, we won the BC championships.
When you were grade 10?
In 10th grade with Kalamalka. And then in 12th grade, we lost the final to Maple Ridge. We made the final of the BCs, but we lost it in the Agrodome there. So it was great. And like I said, it was a weird group of guys. I had been put ahead in school when I was young, so I was a year behind everyone. So all through the years until the 12th grade, I was a point guard because I was the little guy on the team. And then I had in 11th, just started the 11th grade, I had my growth spurt, and I got up to what I am now, 6'4", 6'5". and everybody was small on our team. So in the 12th grade, even though I had been on the junior national team as a guard, in high school I was playing big man for we had just a bunch of guards that, like modern game, so we were getting about 30 steals a game, just run and gun, putting up shots and layups, and it worked all the way until we got up against this team Maple Ridge, which had a bunch of big guys and got every single rebound, just passed it over us, slowed us down, and we lost. So, but that I didn't get any scholarship offers really because of that, because my whole senior year I was a guard, but I'd been playing like a skinny 6'5" kid playing center, just out of necessity. So it was kind of odd. And then
that's interesting. Also, it just makes you now aware as a coach. But I mean, you coach the pro level, right? But something that reminds me, it being a high school coach, to let the kids sort of be who they are, right? Don't force them to, just because they're a 6'6" kid, to throw them in the post. I mean, nowadays nobody wants to go down there anyways. So,
well, we adjusted, and that's my dad. Like I said, my dad was so passionate about it that he was always looking for solutions, and he spent all summer with those, like I said, with those university coaches in the States at these camps and picking their brain, and always thought we had a step ahead of most teams tactically. In spite of our lineup that wasn't traditional.
Sure.
It was small guys, guys from other sports, athletic, love to play defense and run. But we figured it out, and it was good. It was a great experience anyway. But boy, that was a big deal to go down to the
I was just going to say,
BC championships. You were just talking about it. That brings back memories. It's a long time ago, but it's just like yesterday when I think about it, for sure.
Yeah, the good old Agrodome, man. Dead spots on the floor, but packed arena and all that stuff. I mean, it just makes you, you can see the smile on your face just thinking about it. Right. And during those years, when was the plan always to be a post-secondary player, or were you just,
it was almost, I was almost too obsessed and sure of it. I was, just as I was going for, I was always playing with kids older than me and bigger than me, like I said, because I'd been put ahead in school. And, we do, in the summertime, we do those top 40 select BC teams that would go down south and play tournaments and stuff. And I always felt like I could dominate at that level when I get with my age group. So I wanted so much to play university ball, and even to give it a shot, the dream of playing pro ball, even at 16. But it wasn't obvious. Obviously your parents saying, "Oh well, you want to think twice, have options and stuff." But when you're a kid like that, you don't need, you're just too motivated. You don't want to hear the perspectives.
For sure.
So it worked out.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. But I had a lot of help. That's the thing, maybe too, when you don't realize it coming up, how lucky you are that people sort of open doors for you, and just for no particular reason other than their passion for their game, just really try to help you out. And you look back on it, and hopefully I can mention some of those people as we're talking, as we go along, because it's only later on, further down the road, you really realize how much these people did for you and how much they meant to you.
So true.
Of course, I'm talking about my father, but all the way along the line, so many people.
Yeah, and one thing that doing this podcast and chatting with people is you realize that there's circumstances and things that come along the way for people. Some people peak a little earlier, like yourself. You're talking about maybe being a quote unquote late bloomer, right? In that grade 12 year, you have a dominant year, and then your name's out there. What was the recruiting process like for you? How do you end up at UBC? And that's when things really just sort of skyrocket for you, right? I mean, we'll talk about that freshman year, but you kind of late bloom your freshman year too. And next thing you know, there's 30 plus point games, but Bruce ends and all that. How does that come around? Yeah. How did that end up?
I think the Victoria was on about 6 or 7 straight national championships, UVic, and they sort of picked out the best pieces from the Okanagan. Jeff McKay had gone there, Spencer McKay, who was really a big recruit for them coming out of the Okanagan. So there was still a lot of players, and Bruce came through on a recruiting swing. He was the only one that I remember, at least visited me. But he met with myself and 2 Kelowna players, Mike Clark and Alan Lalonde, who were 2 other real high-level players who were also on the junior national team.
Well, this is what I'm saying. We're talking about, you guys are all in one little area of the Okanagan playing on the friggin' junior national team. People need to realize that. It's not like...
Well, these are the guys, like I said, that we're getting in the van together and going on the summer camp together. And then through the high school years, we're just competing, but really close. We're a tight-knit group. And so
it's pretty
Bruce
cool.
Came through, and he sort of saw that he had just come out west. He had done his first year with the team that was in place. There were 2 sort of real figures there. Kevin Hansen, of course, everybody knows, and Paul Johansson, who was had flirted with being on the national team, and actually was an excellent ball player, but ended up being going down to Hollywood and becoming a movie star. But those two guys were the only maybe high-level players at the time that were in the program. There were other guys that were good players, but they were going to be doctors, they were going to be lawyers, all this kind of stuff. Great guys to learn from and to play with, but sort of had other projects. So Bruce was like, okay, well, I got to get some ball players in here. I have to recruit and start building a foundation. So he came up and sort of pitched us all together and said, why don't you come in as a group? And that really appealed to me. I'm not sure about Alan and Mike, what perspectives they had otherwise, but for me, it was just like, wow, that's cool. We can go in there. We'll already have playing time. The coaches really long-term buying in on us, and we can do something. Because my dream had been, of course, like most players, to go to the NCAA, but we didn't have any exposure at all as far as recruiting or anything. So I didn't really have any looks. And as I said, is for them, if anybody had taken a look, I was 6'4", power forward, they didn't, unless they had been following the national team. So yeah, I was only 16, and my dad actually wanted me to go to out east for grade 13. I don't know if that still exists, but to just get another year under my belt, and before I go to maybe go to the U.S. On a scholarship somewhere. And I said, no, I want to do this. I've been invited to junior nats with my friends. I'm going to compete against these guys that I looked up to, like Jeff McKay. So that's good for me. That I love it. Vancouver, I was super excited about going back to the big city. So that was that. I did that, when I had, done the minimum as far as school goes to get into the university. It wasn't, I was terrible. I was just ridiculous.
There's a good pause
in terms of, I just really, that's one of my regrets.
I feel you.
Never really took it seriously. All I could think about was sports. I'm sure it's a common story, but for sure when you look back and say, wow, I got into that, really elite university, where if I would have just I had the time. You always have the time. And all I really cared about was basketball, friends, partying for a few years there. And you look back and you say, wow, I was in that school, and I didn't take advantage. I didn't really give it a chance. But one way or the other, I managed to get in. And we just had a great run, with that group of friends. And it was because we were already friends going in there. Yeah. It was just, we experienced the whole thing sort of at the same time in the same way. It was really special. So
things didn't get weird.
Recruiting actually came in once, like you said, at the end of my second year, we surprised everyone. We knocked off UVic. And yeah, that's one of my games I really remember was the Western Finals. And I think I hit about 6 threes in the final game against UVic. I just got really hot and I was in the zone. It was just this game and we beat them. And it was like this big thing. And we went to nationals and made the final against Brandon. And it was sort of a bunch of kids against a bunch of, men from the States. So we didn't beat them, but we actually made the national final, when we were all rookies with, like I said, that leadership of Kevin and Paul, who were in there last year. It was sort of a perfect mix and just a really an amazing experience. Yeah, Bruce put that all together, and that sort of launched me. And the following year, the following summer, I was back in the junior national team, but we went to the World Championships, junior nationals in Italy, and had even though I was still a couple of years younger than most of the guys, I had I think in Ken's eyes, a new status. He gave me a lot more responsibility. He put me in the money time to hit big shots and stuff. He knew I was up to it. He had experienced it firsthand.
Yeah.
So that really, confidence-wise and, moving forward, I think that's where the following years I sort of became a dominant player, certainly at the university level.
Yeah.
And then even consistently just answering the call with Ken, when he moved up to the senior team, he had me in there as a young player on the senior national team, maybe ahead of my time, which rubbed some people the wrong way. But I think I still stepped up, and I played really hard for the national team and improved each year. So like I said, it's another one of those guys when you're griping with him he was like, Ken, everybody knows Ken. He almost was a Bobby Knight style coach at times. But with retrospect, when you look back and say, boy, think how much I owe this person, sticking with me. I was not an easy guy to coach. I was cocky. I didn't really, I really liked and respected the veteran players, but still I wanted to beat them. I wanted to get their spot, and that rubbed them sometimes the wrong way. It was different back in the day. You had to pay your dues, and the young guy coming into the team, you don't just start putting up shots and, competing, and, you have to sort of Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so I wasn't easy, but I think there's a side of that some guys appreciate it also.
Yeah, for sure.
And boy, like I say, Ken Shields for sure, and Bruce Enns. That's two schools of thought. So I'd go to UBC, and we'd be in a conceptual, much more open style of play. There was a structure, but it was more about reads and inspiration, feeling the game. And then with Ken, very disciplined, structured, technical style of play. Almost old school style. A lot of UCLA offense with very specific X's and O's, and you didn't come out of that framework, but it was all about execution, timing, spacing, and a lot of skill work through the summer. So for me, that was perfect because I got the best of both worlds, and I think it made me sort of a balanced player. And with like I said, in my youth, with my dad coaching me, he was a little both of those, but also he had me playing a lot of different positions and had a lot of different responsibilities. So I sort of think I got a lot out of it in my developmental years, not just being a stereotypical player, sort of trying to be a complete player. But I did drive some coaches mad because I'd go back to Ken and I'd be kind of wild and playing, like I said, conceptual basketball. And then I come back to UBC and, be all like sort of structured and disciplined and wanting to, having to adapt back to the way we played at university. But in the end, they both really, really have my back. And like I said, it's, you look back and say, boy, they really put up with a lot of my shit. And I'm lucky I had them.
A lot of people that have, if you're going to do a podcast and talk to Canadian basketball players, they're going to run into Ken Shields, right? And the one thing that I hear is just that sense of loyalty and how almost even to a fault sometimes, but like, if he's your guy, he'll look out for you and push you and try to make you the best player you can. And I'm guessing that those two combinations just like instinctually, when people think of JD Jackson, they see the numbers, but in terms of like understanding the game and like give yourself some credit to like underrated defender, I'd say. Like, and I'm not trying to pump your tires here, just in terms of like people see 36 a game or whatever, right? And they just think, a pure scorer, but it's like you could play both ends of the floor. Like there's no doubt about that as well. And two legendary coaches at such a young age, I'm sure helped carry you through to so many different experiences, right?
Yeah, and some of us, whether it was me, Tom Johnson, Spencer McKay, Ken gave us a chance. He'd bring us in as that 10th, 11th, 12th guy on the senior team. And if you're going into that and he's believing in you, giving you that, even if you're not the guy who's cut out to block shots or, to be the greatest footwork defender, you're going to kill yourself to do the job, to deserve that spot. So, yeah, I never took that for granted. It was different back in the day. I don't want to sound like an old codger, but for sure you didn't have so much grassroots, even recruiting, AAU people hovering around telling you you're great, giving you the golden ticket. You had to really, really scrape and scratch for an opportunity. There were not a lot of opportunities. And the higher up you went, the less structured, organized basketball there was. Professional basketball as it is now, there's so many openings, but it was really hard to find a job just to play anywhere after 22, 23 years old. Yeah, I knew my ticket was the national team. I knew Ken Shields saw something in me. Bruce was gushing with me. He really filled me with confidence. But the guy I had to prove it to was Ken. But he always kept the door open. And like I said, I was never easy. But I understood that, this guy's all about defense, all about commitment, effort, concentration. So I put in the effort and, Ken just kept giving me the chance. So yeah, it really worked out. And I had, we're talking basketball, but boy, like I said, when you come from the Okanagan and you haven't seen that much of the world, and there's just all these trips we'd go on with the national team, going to these countries in Europe, in Asia, in South America, these tours. It was amazing, just amazing. And with a group of friends, we got really tight with the guys from the East Coast, that we'd see every summer. Yeah, it was just an amazing period of my life. Yeah, there you go.
Rarely do we see someone, it's not very common where you're an elite level player and then you're an elite level coach. Like you're a hell of a coach for people that don't know. Like you're coaching in top leagues in France and kicking ass and taking numbers. Knowing what your personality was like as a youngin, maybe being a little bit more difficult, have you used some of those things and fallen back on those things in your coaching life, understanding how to deal with personalities and egos? And you're talking about, you're an amateur athlete at this point, right? You're playing for Pride, you're playing for Canada, you're playing for the T-Birds. These guys are playing for contracts and money, which complicates things even more. it's a pretty unique skill set to have. How do you manage it all? Because it's, when you think about, I'm trying to think of basketball player that's had success both like really high level playing and really high level coaching. There aren't many people out there. Like,
that was, we'll wait for the end, but you're going to say somebody who I think you should get on your show, but I'll talk about him later. There are a few. It's true that we didn't have, there were players, mostly East Coast players from our generation that went down, that were more, it was a little more organized on the East Coast, so they would get recruited to the NCAA, and some of them actually got into the NBA. You know, not a lot of stars, but there were some players who had access to the NBA. But for us, it was not really realistic. We didn't see it that way. So we had our eyes on Europe. We had guys on the national team who were playing in Europe and told us how it was done, how to go about it. And we knew that it was very important to make the national team and then make a splash, you know, get into these major competitions and be seen. So you have to take that into perspective. You can't just, I mean, you can hammer away on a guy, expecting him to be team first, and that's all it is. That's all we need you for, your role and stuff. But somewhere deep down, at least for us back in that day, it was existential. You have to get a chance. There has to be a springboard somewhere. So I think that the art for the coach, and I think that's still the case, is to, you know, have your eyes wide open with that, have an open dialogue with the player, let him understand what the opening is for him, what his role is, but how that's going to have an opening towards improving his future and helping him move forward towards a professional career. Because it was a problem when I was a young player. You know, we tried to speak with the board of directors with the national team. You know, I was a player rep there for a while and stuff, and try to see if we could get some programs and some things, because we wanted to play on the national team. But on the other hand, there was nothing in place for us to play past 23 years old. So there was nothing. So now I'm still on that. I still really try to help players, you know, get jobs over here, get their start. If I think they put in the time and they have what it takes, because it's not easy. But you know, that as a coach, especially over here where you're on short-term contracts and there's always a higher level. You know, even if you're in the EuroLeague, you know, a top team in Europe, there'll be a higher up, maybe a team in Turkey. Or in Spain, Barcelona, Real Madrid, or something like that, where they can say, "Well, that's the next level up. I want to get there." And if you got a guy in those teams, they're thinking about, "Well, can I get back over into the NBA?" You know, there's always a next level. So to get sort of team buy-in on a player, you have to be really open. With your needs, you know, what you need from him and what you will and will not accept, and on the floor. But then also know that you're really 100% in on his personal project. Anyway, that's the way I go about it.
Relationships, man.
You know, that way you can come back to your original engagements, beginning of the season, you know, when things are going poorly or a guy's frustrated, and you get him back on track and say, "Look, we're still engaged. Yeah. Let's get back to the things we talked about. Yeah. Get you back on track." And that, you know, if you don't do that, kids will really quickly get disheartened. Sometimes they want to leave in mid-season, you know, they'll be calling their agents. You'll feel them shut down. And get flustered a lot more than back in the day. So I get it. I mean, my past as a player and how hard it was for me to, you know, stepping stone my way up to a professional career. I know it's never easy, so I'm open to that. But on the other hand, I also have a job to do. I also don't want to, you know, lose my future. So it's a balancing act, and it can get pretty hectic. You know, I think in North America, there's a lot more media, but within a structure, it can be pretty touchy-feely. Over in Europe, it can be still pretty brutal and volatile, you know, as far as the intensity, the conflictual nature of people, you know, feeling pressure, putting pressure on you, competitiveness within a team. But it's passionate, and it's you get used to it. I mean, everybody gets used to their environment, and I've been out here for a long time, so.
They know what they're coming to by this point. Yeah, for sure.
But it was great to be able to play at that level. The coaching was never really I had taken it in school. Like I said, I didn't take school seriously. So I just said, okay, well, what suits me at university? Okay, I'll take whatever it was called. It was called PE at the time. I think now my degree is in human kinetics. So, okay, you've heard of that? Yeah. Yep. So that was sports basically. And okay, eventually I could be a teacher or a coach. And that's what I ended up being. So I'm not sure how much it served me, but, you know, it was the right choice, even though I think, well, I could have taken it a lot more seriously. But so I had that degree, but I hadn't really planned on transitioning into coaching. You know, I just wanted to play as long as I could. It's funny, I was looking down your list, and I listened just for a few minutes today of Mickey Fox. Yeah, you did with Mickey Fox, and he was my first ever professional coach. You know, there was this.
Oh, no way!
Yeah, he drafted me in
when you're out in
the World
Halifax
League in '92. I was with the Halifax Windjammers, and he actually had me living in his basement.
No,
he did everything for me, and he's just so much advice. And he just told me, he said, "Look, I'm not going to tell you it's hard. It's going to be a hard road, but even if it's just like they're paying you peanuts and you're going to a war-torn country or something, he said, play basketball as long as you can, because once it's over, you're going to realize you're still very young and you got the whole lifetime ahead of you. So just play until you just can't." So, and I remember that for years and years and years, and it stuck in. And I felt from him, it came from a real true place, because he was so passionate about the game and he was still really involved, and I could feel he really wanted to help me out, and I sort of pay it forward. Because he had been a real top player in the day. So it was really neat to hear his voice. It'd been a long time that, the accent's still there. And it's funny. It takes you back. So that kind of thing is, I just said, look, you know what? I'm going to just go out there and play as long as I can, wherever I can. And Europe, and particularly France, really, really went the right way for me. So I ended up getting established as a player, played a lot of years and really great experiences at a high level. And so this, as you mentioned, I played in this team in Le Mans. Le Mans is famous for the 24-hour car rally, Steve McQueen, all that. And Le Mans, I think people say in English. So I lived there for 15 years. I raised my two sons there. And I played for that team for 7 years, and then I coached that team for 8 years. And we won championships in France. And then when I became a coach, we were in the Euro League. So it was just a perfect transition that happened all by itself. I had bought a place in Vancouver when I was a player, and we were going to move back there. And I thought maybe I'd go back to school or get back involved somehow with basketball out there. But coach said, look, you're going to stop playing. I was his captain. He said, I want you to stay around. We got all these young players to develop. You can be their skills coach, do a lot of individual work with these guys and learn the ropes. And I was like, well, it's great. I mean, they respected me. These were, the younger players who I had been the captain. They were, I knew they were going to respond, and it would be worth a try at that level. I said, you know what? How can you refuse it? Let me try. And from there, it went really well. I enjoyed it. The team was happy with me. And then a couple of years later, this is Vincent Collet. He's the current national team coach. He was my coach in Le Mans. He went to the national team, and the team said, okay, you've got your chance. And it really worked out, because I'd been working with that group of guys, and I'd played with them. We had trust and buy-in, and we won. My first year, we won a couple of championships, and that sort of started my career as a coach. Ended up never setting foot in that place. I sold it maybe 5 years ago in Vancouver.
Oh, did you? Yeah,
and I had it rented out for 15, 20 years. I never set foot in it.
And then when you sold it, you realized you wouldn't be able to afford to live in Vancouver anyways.
So. That's for sure. Yeah, that's there's the bittersweet part of it. Yeah. But as far as plans just sort of making themselves, it was never sort of my plan to stay in Europe. Even though my wife is French and my sons were born here, we were going to move back. It's just sort of like one thing led to another, and it was just sort of like, wow, I can't refuse this. I never really thought I'd stay in Europe and be a pro coach, but I'm in this top team. Coach really wants me to try it. And, I was working with just fantastic kids too. The one player most people know is Nicolas Batum, still plays for the Clippers.
Yep.
And my last year was his first year pro. So when I came in the following year, we did a little skill work with him, a lot of really fixing up his shot because he had kind of a crooked shot. So, following his career, and he made a really good run. Was never an all-star, but he wasn't too far off.
Oh, he was close for a few years.
Yeah. And so, to have worked my first experience having to be with him and a couple other guys who were top EuroLeague players now gave me confidence, really. I was inspired. And like I said, to see them move on to such bigger things. I can help these young guys out. Let's keep doing this. And then it turned into head coaching. That's a whole different ball of wax. But again, it's really worth it.
And for the people out there that don't know, we're talking about when you're done at UBC, records have been crushed, 3-pointers have been made, free throws have been made, 2-time player of the year, 4-time All-Canadian, easily one of the best. Well, it's called U Sport now, U Sport CIAU, players we've seen. Can we talk a little bit about the 94 World Championships?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually my last games with the national team.
Yeah.
I was pretty young, I think 94. So I would have been 25.
Yeah. So that's my first question. So, maybe you don't want to get into it, but what's up with that? no more national team after that? Was it, did the phone not ring?
That's a long story, but the reality was our generation of players for about 2 or 3 years, I can't give the years, but the guys that were my age, and we were sort of, there was a lot of the UVic players that had won all those national titles while we were in junior high school and stuff. And then some of the great guys from the East Coast, you know, the Trianos, Wennington, Routons, Mahar, Tony Sims, all these guys, Donahue, his players that had gone Olympics and stuff like that, they were veterans when we were just coming into college. And Ken picked a lot of, when Ken took over as a national team coach, he had a lot of those guys. So that was a great generation. Those guys, Kasanowski and Pasquale, Wiltshire, it goes on and on. And so there wasn't a lot of opening for this next group of us young guys who were in college to jump in there and find a spot. And there were a couple of us, myself, Spencer McKay, and with that, from our generation that had a potential to be pros and to play at that level. And I think on the East Coast, Philip Dixon, I don't know if you remember Phil Dixon. No. He was probably the most talented, the highest upside player of our generation. So we were sort of the guys, and there were a couple more who got in there and then out, Martin Keane, there were Corey House. So guys that I could name them, but we never really sort of as a group took over the national team, had our period there. Because Ken had sort of really leaned on these veteran players from the Donahue years. And again, I was one of the rare guys that sort of managed to stick on most of the time with that team and get that experience. So I was playing on the national team when I was maybe 19. And like I said, Phil Dixon a little bit and he got injured. The thing with Phil was he had just a tear. He went through a plate glass window or something and ruined his leg. And so he never really was the same, but he was headed for the NBA. So we had him a couple summers and Spencer McKay every once in a while. But other than that, it was mostly the vets. So I played, I guess, 6 seasons. By the time we got to Toronto in 94, I'd already been on the national team. I was 25, but I'd already played 6 years on the national team. But not a lot of our guys, maybe a handful of guys from our generation had actually some experience. And when we got to Toronto, there were still a few hangers on from the old Wiltshire. Greg Wiltshire was still there. Yeah. He was towards the end of his career. Mike Smrek, I think, was on that team. But, Eli Pasquale was done. Billy Wennington was done. I think Routons had retired. None of those guys were on that team. So it was a transitional year. And this was a big deal for us. I mean, the second dream team was in Toronto. And we had worked hard. We had been, we had trained together the whole year. We had been centralized to practice together. And then we brought in the big guns. But we didn't do that poorly. I think we finished about 7th or 6th in the World Championships. That's pretty good now, but we really thought, and I think everybody thought we should have got a medal. But it was sort of that middle generation, my generation, the only real flagship player who wasn't sort of brought up in Canada, who come and kind of jumped onto the national team was Rick Fox, who was from our generation. So he kind of became the flag bearer of our generation, and so there was a lot of pressure on him in that tournament. He was really the visual guy selling the project, and everybody's like, well, this guy's coming from the Celtics, so we're going to get a medal. But that team was made up a lot of my generation, like I said, the guys from my generation, and I think we just disappointed flat out. We hadn't spent that many years as a group together where we could say, hey, we're going to carry ourselves to the medal round, and we ended up losing to I think it was Croatia, Greece, teams that had some real veteran pros, and they were, we just couldn't get it done in that and get onto the medal round. So it was fun. It was, like I said, another bittersweet experience because, playing in Canada at that level of competition in Maple Leaf Gardens as it was at the time, wow, it was just really exciting for us. But maybe we just didn't get to that place we needed to be to get to the medal rounds. And there's you can always overanalyze it, but we just didn't perform. And myself as well. I had the run up to that. I had been injured maybe a month before. I had a stress fracture in my heel. And all the run up to that, I was playing the best I'd ever played in my career. I was just really still young, but we had done a tour of Europe, and we had really, really done a job on some of these top European teams. Steve had finished college, so he was Steve Nash was there. We had some real gunners coming off the bench. Big, like I said, big guys like Wiltshire, and Martin Keane was starting to play well. So it was a pretty balanced team. We thought, hey, we can do this. I got injured, and when I came back, not the same at all. So I had a poor tournament, missed some important possessions, that could have turned the other way. So that was really disappointing because I thought that was more than previous years. That was really a chance for us to get into the medal round to establish the program. But I think in the end, it was a stopgap because the next generations further down, Steve, like I said, as the main guy, but then you had, Rowan Barrett coming in, Michael Meeks. They did a great job at the Olympics. And by then, I understood I don't know why, but it was kind of lumped in with Shields guys or Donna, the older group, even though I was sort of entering my prime.
Yeah.
And so I was starting a family over in France. I was established as a pro. So I kind of said, you know what? Yeah, that's cool. I really liked some of the guys that hadn't had their chance, like Rowan Barrett and that were coming in and starting to do a good job with the national team. So I said, oh, you know what? I'll do my thing and, stay at a distance. It was kind of frustrating, but I wasn't against taking the summers off.
Yeah.
Recovering, spending time with my kids and doing vacation. So, and a couple of times I managed to visit training camp just to say hello and stay connected as much as I could. But it shifted at that point really to the East Coast. Grassroots finally really started to develop. Mm-hmm. And some of the potential players on the out East were just, more and more numerous. And to the point where now we just see, wow, places like Ajax and, there's just like, we talk about hotbeds, the Okanagan, okay. But back then, now when I look at the players that are coming out of some of the different parts of Eastern Canada, I'm just, wow, this is fantastic. The amount of coaching and give backs from some of the players and guys that were around in my generation. I see them all the time, staying involved, paying it forward. So that's really exciting. So for me, it was really important for me when I did this last few years, get back to the national team, reconnect in a positive way and give back a little bit, in any way I could.
That's cool.
And positive experience, because to be honest, it's a small world, and a lot of the guys on the national team I played with or against their fathers.
Yeah.
A lot of them, the Scrub brothers, played against their dad. Kelly Olynyk's dad was my coach on the national team.
Shout out Ken. Yeah. Kyle Wilcher coached him, and I played with his dad. Even I didn't coach Andy Routens, but I remember him when he was a little kid, and his dad throwing a baseball to him and stuff like that. So, I followed the program all these years while I've been in Europe, but it was really, really special for me to finally reconnect as a coach with some, with some distance and say, hey, what can I give back here? And that's really all I did. I was always just volunteering over the last few years. And first with Roy Rana, it's a really positive experience because Roy and I had met before with in the summer league with the Spurs. We had assisted together with the Spurs, but cool.
He had always thought he'd come out to France and visit me and see how things are done out there. But then this opportunity came up, and we found ourselves coaching the national team together. It was quite interesting because he sort of caught me. So he was so based in as far as the young players, how they had developed, where they were playing. He got me really up to speed program, because I had been so far away. And then when he went to the NBA, Gordon Herbert took over. And spoiler, he's my guy that I think you should talk to. But Gordy and I, because we sort of have a similar story, have been friends for a while now, and coaching together with the national team, but against each other in Europe. And he coached in France. He played in Europe, and we just know each other really well. So when he said, "Oh, I'm going to be the interim head coach for the Windows, if you want to keep doing it," I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great." So it was just a fantastic way to sort of reconnect with Canadian basketball, with everybody. And like I said, it's so many people I already know. It had been such a long time since we'd seen each other. It's been really fun.
That's cool. Yeah. Hopefully you keep that up. That's a cool story.
Well, it's going to be tough now, when you're that's still what you would call amateur basketball.
For sure.
And when you're in a pro club, it's really, that's the priority. The
Absolutely.
They have to release you to go to national teams. The timing has to work. But like I said, my presence isn't maybe so necessary, but anything I can do to help, like a lot of these kids that I did help coach in the Windows, I also helped to get jobs here in France. There's been a lot of our players coming through France and doing well. So I'll keep doing that, of course.
That's awesome. We want to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Parkside Brewery. Located in the heart of Port Moody on Brewers Row, Parkside offers an amazing atmosphere with one of the best summer patios around. If you can't make it to the brewery located at 2731 Murray Street, then hit any government retail store and try the Dawn Pilsner, the Dusk Pale Ale, or my favorite, the Dreamboat Hazy IPA. The Hoops Journey promises that the beer at Parkside is much, much, much better than the owner
Sam Payne's streaky jump shot. We hope to see you parkside. After a brief hiatus, Good Lad Clothing has returned, but under a new location. 3283 Main Street is where they can be found. Name drop a Hoops Journey to get 10% off any clothing items in store. The store no longer offers barber, but you can find the best retail around. Thanks to our sponsor, Good Lad Clothing, and we hope to see you there.
Couple things before we just get into some fun questions and stuff like that. But two things. You've had some two unique owners, hey, for your teams. One former tennis star and one pretty big time basketball player. And then we got to chat a little bit about playing against the dream team and what that was like, right? Getting to go, I remember watching the game on TV. Actually thought, I was like, we got a chance. We're going to do this. But, but you always remember the visual of you, guarding MJ and stuff like that. So,
so we can start with that. That was 92. It was again another big destination point for our national program. We had focused so much just with the 94 World Championships build up. 92 Olympic qualifying tournament is the first time. Everybody knows the story of the dream team, the whole build up. So for us, on Canadian universities and on the Canadian national team, it's like, wow, we're going to this tournament. We're in the same pool. We're going to play this team. But on the other hand, we're also trying to balance that with, okay, well, nobody's going to beat them.
Yeah,
we want to qualify for the Olympics. So let's stay focused, and let's everybody make sure you're 100% ready and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was kind of almost a distraction, but a really exciting distraction. But which are you more focused on? Playing the dream team, which you're going to play at this date if you make the national team, or the more important probable aspect of that tournament is qualifying and getting the wins you need to qualify for the Olympics.
Were you into the whole pre-game photo thing, or were you like, no, let's go? This is war.
I didn't care less. I was super excited by the whole thing. It had a whole from the whole year building up.
Maybe that won't come out, but he did mumble under his breath. I could care less. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, it was surreal the whole time. The build up, the fact that we were going to play these guys all together, and we had never played pros at international level.
And it really was blown up into a huge thing, right? It was like a first sort of,
So it was just like, hey, let's be ready to play. But the tournament as well. And I think, again, for different reasons, it was sort of, the build-up was really good. We got organized, but at the last minute, Eli Pasquale broke his leg. We brought in a last-minute point guard. I'm not sure. I think we brought in a couple of veteran players. Ken brought in a couple of vets, Leo, David Turcotte, who hadn't done the prep with us. It was kind of a last-minute thing, so the roles weren't clear. And it was, we really, really wanted to do well, I think, as a team, but we weren't all on the same page. We hadn't really prepped a lot together. Some guys were in shape. Some guys were maybe cut at the last minute. Other guys injured, So we sort of were on and off all through the first rounds. And I had actually got more playing time than I expected because I had been consistent. I had sort of gone through the whole process, and game by game, I think I was a pretty consistent player. So I ended up getting a lot more playing time and responsibility than I had expected. So that was exciting.
It's being quite humble for the record, ladies and gentlemen. That was very humble.
Yeah, but anyway, it was exciting. I was young, I was maybe 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
And we played the U.S. and it was, well, to be honest, I had gone down and given a guy $100, the local guy from Portland, local Gazette, photographer. I said, you got a reel of 36 snap photos, something, just snap when I get on the floor, just snap it off of me, playing against these guys.
Yeah.
You just do that for me. I still have those photos. So that was kind of like, okay, I got that done. And as far as you talk about photos and all that kind of stuff, that was in the back of my mind. And I was saying, now I'm just going to play basketball. I'm going to get out there and compete. I played pretty well, but I was, I think, way too hyper and excited. Too much adrenaline. I got foul trouble. I ended up fouling out in about 20 odd minutes, 22 minutes, something like that. And in spite of playing pretty well when I was on the court, some of the vets were upset because I was really going hard at guys and got into it with, I don't know who, Barkley or something. Fair enough. But all in all, well, it was just an exciting experience. You're looking at Magic Johnson, you're picking up Michael Jordan. It was wild. At that time, I don't think it's not the same as it would be now. It's still exciting for players, but somehow I think players feel they have access, so they're connected. There's a sort of a world scale to basketball now. And back then it was kind of like jumping inside the television. to actually see these guys face right up, wow, that's him, and what kind of playing is, and not letting it affect you and still playing well. The problem for us is we competed. They were just sluggish at the beginning, and so we stayed within 5-6 points for, I would say, first quarter and a half. And right before half, they made a run, and we turned the ball over a few times. They just ran like the wind. It was like boom, 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 and that was game. Down by 18 or 20 at half. But we did better than most teams in the end. And like I said, that tournament was a disappointment. I actually had a shot that I missed again. I can't remember the team. It was Venezuela that would have sent us to the Olympics, and it wasn't for me. It was a broken play, kind of like, I don't know if you saw the Celtics game where Smart it got blocked.
Yeah,
the play wasn't for him, but it was like they had switched out and the shot clock went down. He got the hot potato. Well, that happened to me.
Yeah,
and I had a shot to tie it. I think I can't remember what the situation was, but it was sort of went in. It was a bad shot. It was a broken play. It went in and out, and then Mike Smirk had the tip in. And it back rimmed and came out, and then we ended up with a scrum and a jump ball or something. And it was like all of a sudden reality hit us, and it was like, we're not going to the Olympics. And so this whole dream scenario, this crazy huge tournament and everything, and so it ended up being really a disappointing tournament for us. But with like I said, with retrospect, what a great experience, for someone who wants to be a future pro to play at that level. And like I said again, Ken Shields opening the door for me to not only be a part of the team but have a role on that team. It was a big chance for me, and from there I rebounded that very same year to a professional career in Europe. So thanks, Ben.
Yeah, interesting timing, right? Too, like, just to be able to, you see that, you're like, okay, well, there's no level I'm going to see higher than this, right? And then your first year you're playing pro, right? So it's kind of interesting, that timing. And then we've talked, you've mentioned it, and I think it's so cool about how long, I don't want to use the term legendary status, but like to get your jersey retired by a pro club and just feel that pouring and, the just the connection there. It must have been super special, probably something that you never even imagined would happen, right? 15 years with one, I guess, use the term franchise. Like, that's crazy and super unique and very cool.
Yeah, and it was a choice too. I mean, I really liked the town. The coach was just really suited to me. We really connected, and I was at a point where I was going into my 30s. I had kids, and I said, you know what, I want to settle here. I don't want to just keep jumping around from city to city in Europe. I've done that. I had my years in Paris. I had some years in the south of France, Eastern Europe. Even had a year where I was living in wine country with a team that was in. So I did the whole experience for me, and I was like, where can we settle? A town where things are stable, a team that's really, really constant and a high level.
Yeah,
and I sort of bought into that role. Sacrificed a little bit. Pros, it's not easy to get a pro to sort of make that foul for the team and all that kind of stuff. And I became that guy, and basically the coach just really would put me in the money time when he needed, important baskets or execution. He would have me on the floor, but beyond that, it sort of was more about being a glue guy, having the right, attitude, and showing the younger players, this is how we do it here. So he always wanted the first pieces for him. So I finished out my career there. It was sort of perfect. So. For my family, and then, like I said, 8 years after that, coaching for the same team. That's 15 straight years in the same town, in a league and professional circumstances where usually you only sign one, maximum 2-year contracts. We just kept renewing, staying in that team. So we had a really stable situation, and my kids grew up in that town, which is rare out here for pro players. So that was why I stayed so long.
It was time
and
to go,
eventually, as to make transition to that second guy you want to talk about, when we finally, I think I was head coach for 6 years at Team Le Mans, and my last year we actually won this big tournament they play in Disneyland in France. So it was a really fun last season with that team, and I was sort of taking a hiatus here, but how early, maybe before even Christmas, partway through the season. Asvel, which is kind of like the Boston Celtics and the most historical team out in France. It's a EuroLeague team. They called me up because Tony Parker, who was still playing with the Spurs at that point, had bought majority ownership of the team, and he had big ambitions for the team. Who was already a top team, one of the top budgets, but it was going south quickly. I had a lot of experience, like I said, in a very stable, structured team as the coach, but also sort of as a quasi GM. Running the sports side of things with that club. So they were looking for somebody who could sort of communicate with Tony, the Spurs, sort of bring in that sort of Western style philosophy, restructure the team, but also sort of help them learn how our league, how things go in our league. How do you recruit for the French league? How strategically, how do you prepare your season? Administrative side, how things work, what are the rules, tax laws, everything. It just sort of exploded their project from the get-go, and they were sort of desperately looking for someone. So I was, in my hiatus. So it was like, they called me up. I talked with Tony and his interim president, and it just naturally came together, and we had a really good run in Lyon. That's the team, Asvel. They're in the EuroLeague now. And that was a great experience. So I moved to Lyon, the big city, and we did great things. We won the championship my second year. Team is now in the EuroLeague. They're gangbusters. So as with most top teams, after about 4 or 5 years, I got fired. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a great experience. It was really a great, after so many years in the same team, you kind of say, okay, what's my next step? And it went really well. So I actually moved to Lyon. I bought a place in Lyon, and my family's still there because it's just a beautiful city. And my younger son, who was a player, he's now a player agent.
Oh, no way.
So he's just starting out, but
Dad, I got a player for you.
yeah, exactly.
Working deals at the dinner table.
Well, he's got of course he works for an agency, so he's got higher ups who would talk to me, but he sends me the list, and he's always got his advice, but he's not tainted yet. He's just really excited and got a lot of energy. So, but it's good for him to be there, and for me to still be connected with the team in the league. So he's getting his start.
That's cool.
So it's kind of things have worked out for us that from that perspective.
Did he play?
He played well in Le Mans, the team I coached for all those years. Yeah. When I left for Asvel, he stayed. He was in high school. Yeah. But he played in a developmental team, and then he didn't sign a pro contract with them, but his last year on the junior team, he practiced. I don't know if he traveled or not, but he got up to where he was practicing with the pro team.
That's cool.
But he didn't. He felt like, okay, I'm not going to make the first division. At best, I'll be a second division player, and I don't want to put in the work if that's my ceiling. And he wasn't wrong about that. We had some real talk about that, and he made the transition. Took him a while, but now he's doing this, and hopefully it'll go well. And I have another son who's a big fan of basketball, but didn't maybe his basketball skills were kind of like my hockey skills. Yeah. So he did well in school, and he's older though. He's in finance, so
cool.
He's in Paris actually. So that's where we're at. My wife goes back and forth, Lyon and here. Yep. Depending on my availability,
schedule,
how basketball can be. So we've got it all figured out, and like I said, I'm here now, and I've got 2 more years contract. Hopefully, we can keep building this team.
Yeah, and before we ask what your favorite chip is, I was just gonna say, like, what's your vision for your future? Like, have you thought about when things settle down for you? Or you just you're enjoying waking up every day and doing what you love, and it's still a passion for you, and that's good enough right now?
Well, as much as I got used to staying in these teams for long periods and it all being sort of euphoric, the reality is it's very volatile, and you can beyond, even if it's sometimes it can be performance related, sometimes it can just be political, and you can lose your spot. So you have to be flexible. And now I can be, I'm sort of on my own. My kids are grown. Mm-hmm. So there's less pressure, less stress about that. You sign these short-term contracts, 2 years, maybe 3 at the most, with an option. So I really buy in and dig in for that period. And then what happens beyond that, we'll see. What I didn't expect was, like I said, I'm really French. Like, I'm a French citizen now. I've lived more than half my life in France. Some people say I have an accent. Yeah.
You can hear it.
It blows my mind. Yeah. But I've lived more than half my life in France now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
that's crazy to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. So from that perspective, I just sort of say, well, for sure, my family's still in BC. My parents and my sister. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, well, I think when it all comes to an end, I'll be back and forth. I can't just be in BC. I can't just be in France. Mm-hmm. Once I stop coaching, I'll go back and forth, and I'll have that life. But as I put so many years in, I'm going to have my pension in France. I'm like all in I'm French. So it's hard to imagine that, but I'm not the only one. There are guys who have really built a life in Europe, having come over as players, as foreign players, and no regrets whatsoever. Like I said, it's just tough not getting back. So like I said, the Canadian team is great for that, getting back to see everybody reconnect and get back to Canada. And I try to see my parents and my sister every summer or every other summer, at least if I can. They come over to France as well.
Cool.
So that's as far as I can say. It's it's just to you make plans in this business, and they're quickly changed.
Yeah.
So we'll just like I said, really enjoy the project I have right here. You know that it's going to end badly generally. You have to have that in mind. Even if it's going to last 6, 7, 8 years, at some point it's going to end badly if you don't make the move preemptively. So I'm just going to buy in and really try to build here. And then if things do go south one day, no problem, no regrets.
Good perspective, though. Yeah.
Well, you have to have that. I've had that my whole career. I mean, you've been under that pressure. You imagine back when there were no spots for American players, like maybe one American player, foreign player per team in a league, and you get that chance with a non-guaranteed contract. You got that. Yeah. That, sort of hanging over your head every time you're on the floor, every time you're playing. So you kind of just get used to it.
For sure.
And, have perspective on it.
You and your wife, you got the best seat in the house. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if the artist is dead or alive. Who are you going to see?
I looked at those questions. You know what? Most people from our generation, I think, got the chance to go to those concerts and see all those people they wanted to see. So there's probably some that I would cite that I've already seen.
That's okay.
But the one regret, and they're still alive, I think. That I think would have been a great concert in the way, I really like to get out there and kind of go wild and mosh it up, was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were on, West Coast when I was in university, and through the summertime, all those festivals, Lollapalooza and that grunge period and stuff. You saw that stuff, but I never got to see them, and I really liked them, and certainly the energy they would have produced. So I think I'd have to be young again to experience it the way I wanted to experience it back then. But that would be the regret, the one show I didn't get to. That was right there. I mean, it was a West Coast group, and I was out there, and it was our generation. So I guess I would say that rather than going back and saying, all these sort of legendary artists who have passed. I mean, realistically, that's the one I regret. I never did go see them go wild.
I went about 7 or 8 years ago. They were at Rogers Arena downtown. They just jammed for like an hour and a half straight. The only thing they addressed the crowd, they're just like, "What's up, Vancouver?" And then they just literally jammed and walked off the stage. I was like, that was amazing. Like, they crushed it. It was awesome.
Still, okay.
Yeah, wow. Still did it. Yeah, it was wild.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, I got out here in France. I saw the Fugees. I saw Bob Dylan, of all people.
Wow.
With Elvis Costello. You see these people come through Paris just because they want to play Paris. And my first 2 or 3 years when I was a young player, my first experience where I met my wife, sounds cliche, but I was playing in Paris. So I got that whole experience, going out, living life, playing ball. It was my first, one of my first pro experiences. It was just sort of like, wow, I'm so lucky here. I mean, how did this,
That's
happen?
awesome.
So, anyway.
Yeah. Good things happen to good people, man. Who have been some of the most important people in your life? You've touched on a few. Anybody else out there? Or
well, I won't talk about my family because it's everyone in your family. When you're in this line of work, you don't see them a lot. They got you here, whether it's your parents, whether it's like I said, my actual family now, my wife, and my kids, what they have to deal with you not being around, with your needing, emotional support at certain times when you're in terrible mood, stuff like that. So, of course, they're all, it goes without speaking that they were integral to me. I have just a few friends, and they are linked to, that started with basketball, but are life friends. They're doing something completely different now. You did talk to Jeff McKay a few weeks ago. We've been close for a lot of years, and we have a group of friends who have stayed really tight. One other probably my best friend throughout the years was at UBC. When Paul Johansson, not him, but he was a vet when I came into UBC, and the vets were supposed to have one rookie player that they sort of looked out for, showed you the ropes. Paul was my guy. So when I was a couple of years later, the vet, there was a young player came in, a rookie. His name was Finbar O'Reilly, who was from Vancouver College, and he played a couple of years. Again, wild about basketball, passionate, but he moved on to bigger and better things. But we sort of had a completely different career trajectory. He's sort of a world-renowned photojournalist, and he's based in Barcelona now, but he's been in Dakar in Africa. He's been in London, but he's always been sort of, when I've been in Europe, he's been there, whatever. And we've always stayed in touch, always, see each other 2-3 times a year. We take vacations together and stuff. And this, now it's going on 40 years. So like I said, his job is even more, he covers all the wars, all the big, really pressure cooker situations. So he's been really, really supportive for me. I've tried to be supportive for him away from family. We have these parallels, and we've just been really tight and committed to each other for a long time. So I think he's been really, really important for me. And like I said, I can't cite the people that, is one by one, there's too many of them, but if certain of those have been there since the very beginning and they're still there, that's for sure the people that mean the most to you.
Cool.
Of course, in basketball perspective, we spoke of most of them, those coaches.
Yeah.
Starting with my dad through Bruce Enns, Ken Shields, and on, they were really important to me.
Yeah. When we were doing research and, because we got to be prepared to talk to a legend as yourself, right?
Can we stop with that?
Coach Enns, all right?
Yeah.
The thing that he wanted me to ask, he says that Bruce does give, he gives your dad a lot of credit for your success as a player and a coach. Yeah. But he also says your mom provided a lot of intuitive intelligence and wisdom. You want to expand a little bit more on that, or?
Look, they were both, that's nice. Yeah. Bruce is still really close with my dad. They still talk. And yeah, my mom, she was sort of the rock, the no bones. I talked about my dad's family being a sports family, NHL family. And that was sort of more natural, father-son, passionate about sports. My mother was also an athlete, but she came from, the tough life. Her father, her grandfather, uncles, they were all in the mines in southern Saskatchewan. Coming up, they moved up to BC, built their own sort of shack houses and sort of scraped their way. So she didn't have an easy life, but it's good sometimes to come out of that and make it, to a really stable life and to work hard. And she ended up being a higher up in the Bank of Montreal. She did really well long term and just kept working and working. And I think she was, as Bruce says, feet on the ground, and she still is, but someone who also has a real perspective on life and, it can catch you when you're maybe getting ahead of yourself, getting out over your skis and say, hey. And then because she was so solid financially, any kind of investments or anything I had to do, taxation, all that kind of stuff, she was always sort of took care of all that stuff for me because, we don't think about that stuff. And if you leave it all up to your agent or people that maybe you don't know, you can kind of get wrapped up in scandal or screwed. And she was always an anchor that way as well. So I had really just a lot of luck, like I said, all the way through, whether it was family, whether it was, like I said, basketball people opening doors for me. And that was the one thing that'll probably lead to one of your questions. I'll ask it myself, but you asked, if you could do it all over again, or if that one. I wouldn't change anything. But I think the one thing I would change about myself is probably I think the humility and the recognition, the people that maybe I didn't keep in touch with or, really realize at the time how much they were doing for me, how much I needed them to get me where I wanted to be. It was nice to talk about a lot of them today. But that's the one thing. I was just really such an arrogant, cocky guy. It took me far, I think, in basketball.
Yeah.
But, I never took school seriously at all. Never bought into school. I drove some coaches and some teammates nuts because I was just so sure of myself. Again, it's a double-edged sword, would have got where I got without it. But on the other hand, I think if I would have had a little bit more perspective, and I think it was just maturity. Like I said, I came into university, I was 16, in 12th grade, and all of a sudden, all this success, all this, I just felt like I knew everything. Going 100 miles an hour and doing well. That's the one thing, but I wouldn't change anything about my life. I've been really lucky.
That's good reflection, though. I mean, that's what life's about, right? I mean, if you were still in the same spot, it'd probably be disappointing, but, you've reflected and learned, and now, so.
It's funny, and now, like you said, in my position, I do see a lot of kids coming through that remind me of myself.
Like, you look familiar.
And we talked about that at the outset, you kind of have to say, oh, well, I've been there.
Yeah.
And then sort of say, be indulgent, but then also, help them fix their limits and move forward. So
for sure. Now you're in France, you get amazing food on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about ketchup on macaroni?
Look, I get teased about it all the time. Sort of the cliche over here is like, oh, you want ketchup? With the French guy, we're going to bring you some ketchup. You're American, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you actually put it on macaroni or pasta over here, they would actually tear up your paperwork and put you on a plane home. So it's never really been an issue. I remember in college, this guy we talked about, Mike Clark.
Yeah, of course.
He was my roommate. We were close.
Clarky was my assistant coach when I was at Langara. So it was Kevin and Mike. So,
and he was, how opinionated guy, brilliant guy, but it's so opinionated.
Mike Clark, opinions?
Yeah, Mike Clark. So he was my roommate, and he was a big ketchup guy. So it was his macaroni and cheese, right?
Yeah.
Kraft dinner or whatever. And then also the grilled cheese sandwiches. Man, it wasn't like dipping it. He was actually scooping ketchup, like loading it up. And I just sit there and cringe. I go, like, what are you doing? And of course, he had to defend it. You didn't say, it's not very reasonable, or maybe it's a little much. It's like, this, try it, this and that. These big, long arguments defending his position. And anyway, it kind of turned me off loads of ketchup and stuff like that, like mixing it into macaroni and stuff. But I'm not going to say I don't like ketchup. I'm sort of between those two worlds. I'm become sort of quasi-French, so I do really enjoy the French cuisine and the sophisticated stuff, but I'll still put ketchup on my burger.
There you go. Okay. Thanks for the...
No ketchup chips, though. For the second part of that question, I also do not like ketchup chips.
Really?
Yeah. Because you asked what's the best chip is a favorite chip, and I'm like, I'm not a ketchup chip guy either. It's just too much for me.
So then what is it?
Just, nachos. I'll take nachos with some salsa, those Doritos, but without all the cheesy flavorings.
Yeah.
Natural. That'll be more my thing. That just those, with some salsa, some beer, watch a game.
No ketchup chips.
I can't really get into the flavored chips that much.
Yeah. Your Canadian passport has now been revoked.
Ketchup chips.
Yeah. Do you have much time to read or watch movies if you were to take a choice?
Well, I think everybody does now with you don't have to go to the theater. You just got to, Netflix or download whatnot.
Yeah. So what's an all-time classic for you?
Oh, it just goes too far. I was in Paris when I saw that period when movies were still a little bit, there was a little bit of variety.
Yeah.
So Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump and, all those movies. I saw them sort of in that same period in Paris, in these sort of European theaters where you can have a beer and stuff like that. So it's kind of, that was really cool. So I would say, I guess Pulp Fiction or, what were some of the other ones? Seven.
Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption. I saw all those movies in Paris and in the theater. So those are the ones I really enjoyed as an adult. When I was young, we could go back and that takes forever. I would say Pulp Fiction in Paris. I saw, of course it was in English with the subtitles.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. And as far as books, I did do a lot of reading when I was a player. I even actually tried to write a novel when I was a player just to disconnect. But it wasn't about informing myself or reading about coaches or successful people. It was autobiographies. I wasn't really ever into that. It was more just fictional, whether it was, crime stories or more just straight up novels. So I read, to be honest, I'm not going to pretend I'm intellectual. I would read what my wife either just finished reading or what she would suggest. And her books were in French, so that helped me too. It helped me to just get better and better with French. So I read in French, so that's pretty intellectual, I guess.
There you go.
There was one author, his name is, he just died in the last few years, Henning Mankell. He's I don't know if he's known in North America, but he does crime novels, detective novels. His main character was Wallander, I think was the name of the character.
Okay.
But he's Swedish, and everything happens up in Sweden in a small town, solving these smaller crimes and detective work. I got into those a lot when I was a player. He wrote a lot of those novels, but just more of an escapism type thing, like get my head away from basketball and read. But not so much since I'm coaching, how it is. It eats up your time.
Sure does. And your brain. If you could go back to one game, what would it be? Good or bad? Any reason? Just to relive
for that one, if I'm being honest, it's probably it's not what you would expect. I wouldn't want to go back and replay the Dream Team because it was just fantastic, and it would just I lived that. And some of the big championships you either won or shots you missed. Like I said, would I go back and retake that shot to go to the Olympics? And maybe I'd miss it again. It's just like that was a great or a horrible experience in and of itself. I think if I could relive it, it would have been, like I said, not a particular game, but some of those national team tournaments and stuff we'd go to, just the time when we weren't playing, with some of the players, the guys that, that I Did I really? Some of them have passed. I won't name names, but it would just be great to be together with those groups again, and the camaraderie and the excitement about being in those tournaments, win or lose.
Yeah.
So it's hard to sort of say this game or that game.
Yep.
Yeah, the one thing I think Jeff McKay again talked about it the last time. He organized, it was great. He organized a reunion of our junior national team with Ken and a few of the players. Most of the players, like I said, that are still alive. And we watched the one game. It happened to be one game where I hit a lot of important shots and played really well. And reliving it that way with all my former teammates who were all old and we're having drinks and teasing each other and look how skinny you were and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Boy, that was fantastic. So, yeah, no, like I said, that's more what I would want to relive is the camaraderie more than just a particular moment in a particular game.
Yeah, that is the best part. Like when you look back, it's like just the fun little moments, the goofy things that happen on the road, pranking guys in the hotel, whatever, right? Like the wins and losses are great, but those little moments and what a powerful, fun night. Did they have to... Was the video on like the old film or was it VHS or how did
it was really scratchy and whatnot, but it was there. Downloaded. I don't know where they found it. And then, they did a lot of great things. Some of the guys had sent pictures and we did a whole montage of the old photos we had from the trips and stuff. And that was just hilarious.
That's awesome.
Just a great experience. So yeah, I would like to go back to those because that's what you remember. Yeah. Those relationships, those moments, more than particularly to just play a specific game. 100%.
Now your scope in terms of players that you've seen, whether played against, coached against, is there a matchup that stands out to you? Is there someone that you had the scout?
Yeah,
I forced this guy into the ball screen this way, and then it just didn't work out,
like I said, we'll get coaching out of the way because coaching. Sure. I talked about Batum. That was a formative experience for me as a new coach, working with him. But then a lot of the guys who are in the NBA now, who are European, I've coached against. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So that was always challenging, but it would be hard to pick one and say, well, this particular guy really, especially when he was young. Now I look at him and say, oh, wow, it's really better now. But going back to when I was a player, as a young player, he's going to hate me for this, but Jeff McKay is a couple of years ahead of me, and he was the superstar of our neighborhood, and I kind of looked up to him, same position, and I was like, wow. I even played against him. It was a year or two behind him in school, but he was kind of the guy, and I thought, he went to UVic, and he was on the national team. I was like, I want to be that, So he was one of them, and the other guy in high school that I looked up to, his name is Dale Olson. He was from Vernon. He played at UVic too, but Ole. And he's in Vernon. He's running the hoops. Was it Hoops and Hustle camp?
Okay. He was coaching did he coach at U of A for a bit and
I don't
coach
know.
at UMBC?
Dale forever, but I know he's still in Vernon. And he's running that camp that I think my dad actually started about 40 years ago with Bob Shannon, another coach.
That's awesome.
From Vernon. So there's a real continuity there. So there's a shout out for him, but also I just remember he was like the coolest guy in school, the best athlete in every single sport. And he was a few years ahead of me. And I was just like, wow, that guy. Yeah. We ended up being friends, but for sure he was kind of the cool hometown hero.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then when I moved up to a higher level, for sure it was Steve for a while. Even though he's younger, he was the hometown guy who actually made it, who really, Steve was the BC guy that you're like, wow, this guy's, he's going to make it to the next level. Mm-hmm. I had played with him and I knew what it was like even at a very young age to play with him. You can sense it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just the way because he wasn't flamboyant when he was young. He was just very, he played Ken Shields basketball, very disciplined. Mm-hmm. But just the vision, the very clean and just the timing. For a young guy like that, I was a scorer. I needed the ball and he would just get it to me right at the right time. We hadn't come up together. Mm-hmm. But he just sort of quickly knew where I needed the ball. And so that, and a great guy. That's the thing about it too, is going back to the camaraderie, we'd go on these trips and we'd be in Europe and it was just exciting. So I followed him always. I was in Europe, but of course all his way up. And it just, I was inspired certainly by the fact that because I just, as much as I could follow just about every game he played, I sort of plateaued as far as my ability at a certain age. And it seemed like Steve, you get to 30 and you say he can't get any better. And then you look at him, he's 33 and he's better than he was when he was 30. And then he improved every year, just got better, and better, and just dominated more and more. So that really impressed me. So that as far as contemporaries and guys I played with or against, and of course Jordan and everything that revolved around him and his world. The guy that you played against that really, that blew you away, and that whether it was on the court or off the court, just everybody was sort of wrapped up in that. I'm sure you were as well.
Of course.
On the tail end. So that was cool to have played against him, but I'm not going to invent somebody else that was my hero. I was wrapped up in that like everybody else.
I may have been more excited to guard Magic, to be honest. That was my guy.
Yeah?
Magic was my guy. Yeah,
I didn't guard him. I wasn't a point guard, so I was up against Jordan, Drexler, Pippen, those guys. The coolest part of that, going back to that game, was afterwards, when they were just, you think they'd just take off, you wouldn't see them, but they were hanging around in the hallways and talking with us and saying, hey, great game, way to go, you guys played hard.
That's cool.
How old are you? All this kind of stuff. It was like, whoa, talking to this guy.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And I think from there on, I just it was just like, okay, not only this guy, it's just otherworldly as a basketball player, he's like a classic guy.
Yeah.
You've seen all of them, and none of them, it wasn't ridiculous. And they were really, really honestly, like good guys, respectful. They didn't look down on us like we're trash or anything. The reality of it for them. I thought those are two guys probably really my contemporary sort of Sid that I looked up to, and I thought, wow, those guys are really outstanding. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, the poster on my wall was Dr. J for sure. That was we hardly got any film of NBA games or anything like that. So you would just get clips, and he was the guy that would be floating through the air doing these crazy things and stuff on the rare clips you'd get from, the NBA and whatnot. And
sure.
You see him on posters and sort of. I did the Dr. J jumping program when I was in high school, trying to learn how to get all this kind of stuff. So that would have been.
What were those shoes called? Remember they had the shoes with the lift on the front? They're called jump shoes or whatever. And they
I never tried those things, but I did when I crossed the border to go buy my shoes. The first ones I bought were the Converse All Stars. Those leather All Stars. And then Nike came in.
Yeah,
we started buying Nikes.
I saw a tweet of Dr. J this week. 7 years old, and he threw one down. I was like, "Geez, man, that's crazy." Yeah,
that's amazing, because I was trying to do it on my 50th birthday, and I was actually with the national team during one of the windows, and all the younger guys were filming with their phones and trying to egg them on, encouraging me, and I must have tried 20 times and just doing that boing, 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 and never did get one to go down. I said, well, I guess I'm not going to injure myself. So
I was going to say I was the body the next day.
That's the end of it. So I made it because I used to do that every year on my birthday at Duncan.
Okay, yeah.
I made it. Isn't that terrible? I made it to 49, and then on 50, it was just like,
damn.
Reality.
But the Achilles is still attached. So I mean,
that was
you didn't get the dunk down, but the body was still good, which is more important. Yeah.
But both those guys, some of the guys on the team, Mike Meeks you had on the show.
Yep.
I've known him for a lot of years too, because he played in France. And national team player.
He said he really enjoyed his time in Europe. Loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's still connected. He's still connected. Yep. He helps players so much. I mean, it's his job, but he really does his all to get guys,
I had the opportunity to they did a Canada basketball came out and did a camp or whatever, and he ran it. So that's when I had a chance to meet him, and I helped for the weekend. And what a nice guy! And you could just tell he's got that aura that
he's eclectic. He's got a distance. He's seen a lot of things, and he knows. I think he's got that perspective, and he can really help kids. Sort of key in on what's important.
Yeah,
and not just give truth to people, but really hear them and look at their situation. I find him really an interesting guy.
That's cool.
And then some of the younger coaches that I didn't know. Pat Tatum. I don't know if you know Pat Tatum.
Nope. Don't know Pat.
Coach at McMaster. He and then some of the video guys, just all these guys are just they're so young and full of energy, and they're passionate. So it's just cool to get back to, and you have that here in France, but it's in Canada on your national teams, because it's really a fun experience. So
for sure.
That gave me a lot of energy, because, you kind of get burnt out at some point. I took those couple of years, when I was around 50, and going back to the national team a little bit really gave me a lot of energy.
That's good, man.
Get back to it. So
right on. Again, thank you for doing this episode. It was great. Very, very cool. Before we let you go and you figure out how to grind out the last couple games of the season here and keep the boys motivated, any sort of last thoughts, reflections, anything popping in your brain before we hop off the Zoom here?
Well, no, I mean, we went through just about all this. It's about enough talking about me. I just really appreciate it. I'm going to go back and listen to a lot now. Like I said, we're heading into the off season, so I'm going to try and listen to a lot of those interviews.
Cool.
Going back, so many of those previous interviews are guys that I knew well that I haven't been able to catch up with, or guys that I would have recommended that you interview. So it's going to be interesting to go back. So congratulations and keep doing it.
Thank you.
And I think, for sure, if you can get Gordy Herbert on here, because he's sort of like me, but plus. He's been in the NBA a couple of years ago. He was with the Nets. He was assistant to Jay, the Raptors. He's the current head coach. He was a couple of years ago head coach of Canadian national team. He's current head coach of the German national team right now. EuroLeague coach. He's won all sorts of championships. So this is a guy who comes from Penticton, small town. He played in the Olympics in LA. He played in Finland professionally. He played, and he's built his life out there. And people maybe just don't know Gordy. And he's just so important to Canadian basketball. And he has so much, like I said, perspective on so many things, outside of Canada. And from a basketball point of view, he'd be really interested to talk to. So,
awesome.
If you want, let me know, and I'll try and get a hold of you, get you in touch.
Please do. I know the name, and just it's fun just sitting down and listening to these people. And like you say, there's so many people out there that have these stories and maybe just haven't had, not that it's like a spotlight, but just the opportunity to share, right? And we'd love to have
in an open way. Like this is, it's very, it's a blast from the past type thing. Really get the old stories. It's not just an interview, so it's a lot more fun to do for sure. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Our pleasure, honestly, and continued success as a coach, health and happiness to you and your family. Enjoy your time away from, in the off season, but your brain will probably rest for about a week, and then you'll be thinking about what's next.
I don't know. Maybe are you around this summer? You're going to be around this summer?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if I'll be coming back through, but I'll give you a shout if I come back out to BC.
Please do.
We'll have a beer.
Yeah, that'd be a pleasure. Yeah, on me. Okay, all the best. Thanks. What a great episode. Cool. Shout out to our sponsors, Parkside Brewery, Good Lad Clothing. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for supporting A Hoops Journey. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. You can find us on social media at A Hoops Journey and on our website, ahoopsjourney.com. Thank you to our guest, JD Jackson. Thank you to our sponsors, Good Lad Clothing and Parkside Brewery, and we will see you on the next episode.